Supervisor.
Since sir will be joining in a few minutes, till then we can begin with the initial proceedings of the session.
Okay.
Okay. So a very warm good evening to all the participants on the platform. As we all know that today, because we have been initiating the lecture series with foreign experts, with the renowned faculty members of the countries of the universities which are having the resource pool in varied agriculture and allied sciences. So in this series, we have yet another very renowned and very distinguished professor, Dr. K. Muthu Kumarappan sir. So he'll be dealing, he'll be stating, elaborating on a very important topic because we being in agriculture and allied sciences obviously know the importance of processing, specifically when we state it in terms of making it a higher aiming towards nutritional and food security. Obviously, it's a very important topic for all of us, those who are from core agriculture, those who are from agriculture engineering, and those who are from agriculture and allied sciences. So I welcome you, sir, on behalf of this IDP NHEP project, which is Institutional Development Plan under National Agriculture Higher Education Project, the ICR and the World Bank funded project which is running at GB Pant University. So your lecture will obviously provide very fruitful insight to our young graduates. And so prior initiating the session, I first of all invite Dr. UC Lohani sir, who is a project scientist of the academic team at this project, to briefly put an overview of what Muthu Kumarappan sir have all achieved about what his profile, what his stature is all about. So I invite UC Lohani sir for welcoming all the participants, for welcoming the speaker, and for briefly telling us what means what all Kumarappan sir have achieved and how we are going to extract from his deliberation today. So over to UC Lohani sir, please.
Okay, thank you, Dipti. Once again, I welcome all the participants and welcome to Dr. Muthu. First of all, I would like to tell you all that Dr. Muthu is my PhD advisor, so well-known person, and I think this is I'm the best person who can tell him about. So that's why I take this opportunity to uh, go through his achievement and biography in front of you all. So Dr. Mathu is a currently distinguished professor in graduate coordinator in Agriculture and Biosystem Engineering Department at South Dakota State University in USA. And he is specialized in bioprocessing, agricultural engineering, food engineering, and he did his PhD in 1993, and after that he got his postdoc from 1993 to 1997. He joined the faculty in South Dakota State University in 97, and also during this after that joining that faculty, he has been a visiting professor in the College of University College Dublin, Ireland in 2006 and 2007. He has been a principal investigator of several research projects, and he advised more than 50 undergrads and grad students with both academic and research activities. And his research area involved in national and international standard development, basically focused in food and bioprocessing. He has co-authored more than 250 peer-reviewed publications and more than 350 regional, national, international presentations he has handled. And most of the time he has been invited as keynote speaker at several international conferences. And he had been awarded by some awards. Three of them are 2016 Nehru Fulbright Fellow, 2013 Distinguished Professor, 2012 ASAB Fellow Award, 2012 FO Butler Service Award, 2011 Griffith Faculty Research Award, 2010 International Research Award, 2009 Evelyn E. Rosenschneider Standard Award of some awards out of his long list category. So these are his achievements that he has achieved during his career since he joined that university. And He has been known for his outstanding contribution as a research leader and educator in the food and bioprocess engineering area. So I think this is good opportunity for us to listen him today, and I hope that you all will take the advantage of his expertise and other things. With this, I think I'll just take you to Deepthi again so that he can put it further. Thank you, Deepthi.
Well, thank you, sir. So I feel without wasting time further, I request Kumarappan sir to please proceed with his deliberation and provide us the fruitful insight for today's session that we have all gathered for. So over to sir.
Great. Good evening to all. I am honored to be here with you this evening. Your time is evening, my time is early morning. I thank Dr. Logani and Tripti for giving an excellent introduction about me. When they informed you all, I achieved things, but in fact, it's heartwarming to hear that. But it's because of my students, like Dr. Logani, who was a PhD student under me. So students like me, like them, they are the one who are in the forefront, and because of their hard work and work ethics, we are able to do these things together. So it's not just me; it's my students who are the forefront in doing all the work and then publishing their work in a timely fashion. So without further ado, I like to focus this evening, talk about advances in food processing. Uh, when we talk about food processing, you all know that there is a very traditional old way of doing processing, like thermal processing. So this evening, I thought I'll spend 15 to 20 minutes giving you some sampling of research work we have been doing at SDSU, maybe 15-20 minutes. And then after that, another 15 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a little bit about what is South Dakota State University's university department and what kind of things, what all the other people are doing in my department. So it's not just only food processing. If you're interested in water resources, machinery, environmental, livestock, and there is a lot of other things you can focus on also. So I will give you some information about that also, so that you all get if you like to come here and do your graduate studies, you will have an opportunity to do that. So so let's talk about the thermal processing and non-thermal processing. Thermal processing is a method of cooking the food and making sure that food is safer to eat. So when you do the thermal processing, you all know that there will be a loss of vitamins, minerals, maybe sometimes the textural changes are there. So people don't get everything, but it's food is safer, right? So we are doing thermal processing work in a non-traditional way. Our thermal processing is a continuous process, and we try to include a lot of adding value to the agricultural commodities in a regular processing method. So I'll talk about thermal processing first, and then non-thermal processing methods. Non-thermal processing is using less heat so that we'll keep the more vitamins and minerals in the food product, but at the same time, food is safer. So with that, let's move on to the thermal processing. Thermal processing, in thermal processing, we use the extruder as a reactor to do all our processing methods. It's a it's a one process. Extrusion is a process, but there are several unit operations can be done in one process. Again, it's a continuous process, so you get a lot of throughput. It's not a batch process like canning. You all know canning, correct? So canning, if you try to make the food safer, if you use canning, that's a very batch process. You need to process them in cans, and then you need to process to get the correct temperature time combination, and then you cool the product, get it out, and then load it again like that. But this one is extrusion is a continuous process. As you see it here, there is a barrel. within the barrel there are screws run, and there is a motor at the in the left side of what you are seeing, and then you can have a different ingredients, and you can add water into it so that you can cook the food. So basically it starts with the feeding zone when you put the material inside, and then it gets metered at transition zone and cooking zone. So typically product comes in as a solid, and then within the metering transition zone, the solid become part of the solid become liquid, so solid and liquid. And then in cooking zone you are cooking the product, and it become molten liquid, and when it comes out through a small die. So there's a pressure difference. Inside the higher pressure, outside is the atmospheric pressure. So it's because of the pressure difference, the product get its own shape. And if you want puffing, you can puff the product also. Example is a lot of cereals and things like that. They use the extrusion for making those products. In this process, as I said before, several unit operations. You can conveying, mixing, melting, pumping. So everything happening, all these unit operations are happening in one process. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can do a lot of formulations. You can a lot of machine and process parameters in this system, which define the final product characteristics. If the product temperature is more than 100 degrees C in the dissection, and then depending upon the feed rate, the viscosity, elasticity, class transition temperature, heat capacity, those are all will be varied, and there is a product pressure also plays a role here. So you can have an expanded cooked product if the product temperature is more than 100 degrees Celsius. But if you use product temperature less than 100 degrees Celsius, you can form the pasta non-expanded product, pasta, noodles, things like that. So depending upon the temperature pressure combination, you can develop a different shaped product. So that's a very good advantage in terms of the extrusion. I'm going to show you next few slides. I'm going to show you some of the work we did. One of the project we did was looking at the effect of extrusion on physicochemical properties of soy flour-based exudates enriched with apple pomace. Typically, people use cornstarch, soy flour, wheat flour like that, but we want to add value to the low-value co-products from the different other processing. Apple juice making, you get apple pomace. So we want to add apple pomace into the soy flour, so that we try to get the more health benefit of the product. So the objectives of this study was we want to use a single screw extruder using the defatted soy flour as a main protein source, and we want to add apple pomace and looking at the product exudate physicochemical properties of the product. So some of the blend we used was apple pomace concentration was from 0 to 16%. Because of that, soy flour percentage reduced in different ratios. And after the extrusion is over, when you get the expanded product out, we want to measure the physicochemical properties, and we measure the expansion ratio, water solubility index, water absorption index. Water solubility index is mainly how the product, when you put them in the water, how much of the product is soluble in the water, and then water absorption index is how much water is absorbed by the total product components. Looking at the porosity, bulk density, unit density, and we measure the total phenolic content and antioxidant activity, because apple pomace has a lot of phenolic content and antioxidant activity. And we also measure the color of the products. Some of the results we got, we used different screw speed, different temperatures. So the results you see is for the water absorption index and water solubility index. When you increase the apple pomace content, the water absorption index decreased significantly, and so the water solubility index increased significantly. And then temperature-wise, as the temperature increased from 100 to 140 degrees Celsius, which is the die temperature, the water solubility decreased, and same with the water absorption index also. And then screw speed wise, there was not much difference in terms of whether you are operating the extruder at a higher speed or lower speed, because overall, in general, temperature, moisture content play a bigger role than the screw speed itself. Here, what you see is the total phenolic content and also the hardness value of different extrudates. At a higher speed, the total phenolic content increased at different temperature of the extrudate, 100 degrees C, 120 degrees Celsius. But at 140 degrees C, very high temperature, total phenolic content decrease, and which is expected. That's what happens when you use higher temperatures. And in terms of hardness of the sample decrease with respect to temperature in general, and the higher apple pomace content tend to have a lower hardness value, or become more crispier with the apple pomace content. So that's one of the study. The other study is it's not only the looking at the extrudate characteristics, but also the we want to examine the what happens to the extrusion processing parameters like mass flow rate, how much energy required, specific mechanical energy consumption, viscosity of the product inside the extrudate, temperature and pressure profile of the dough inside the barrel. So those are things we are able to do. We are able to do that. We have resources for doing this, capturing these data points during the extrusion processing. So we can simulate that also. And then we also developed the puffed snacks from carbons of flour and DDGS. DDGS is another co-product from the ethanol industry. In Midwest, in US, we grow a lot of corn. So we use corn, not only corn is used as a food material, but also to make the ethanol from the corn itself, because corn has a lot of starch. So you can ferment the starch, and then you can convert the starch into glucose, and from there you can produce the ethanol. And once you remove the starch, use the starch to produce ethanol, there is leftover protein, high protein stuff, which is called distillers dried grains with solubles. That's called DDGS. And we want to add value to the DDGS. So we are trying to develop snack products using the carbons of flour and DDGS. And that is one of the high value, healthy product development research. So and there's a lot of work going on, and we did a lot of work, and we still continue to do this kind of research work. The other area we have been concentrating on is not only human food, but also we all eat a lot of fish. So when you try to develop fish, we have to use a lot of fish feed, which has a lot of fish meal into it. Added to it. So that's only way fish can eat that fish feed. So we want to develop soy-based fish feed for tilapia feed. And there's a lot of work we did, and a lot of work going on. So one of the study we did was the main issue is a lot of time is getting a good floating fish feed, because you can produce floating fish feed and also sinking fish feed. So some of the work we did was looking at the how to produce the floating fish feed. But problem there is when the extrudates may not be bind together when you come out of the extruder. So we use a lot of different binder to see whether how much you can bind this product. We use 5 different types of binder for doing this work, and 3 different concentration and inclusion level, 2 different screw speed. So you may be wondering what's a fish feed. We have resources for doing this aquaculture fish feeding trial. If you look at the aquaculture production, in 2000, there was 13 million metric tons produced. And then in 2010, in 10 years, it increased by threefold to 37 million metric tons. So we like to replace part of the fish meal with first generation or third generation byproducts. So TDGS is a first generation byproduct. And you can use the twin screw extruder. We have twin screw extruder also. You can produce a higher amount of extrudates, fish feed using the twin screw extruder. And this is one of these things you see in the process here. Use the TDGS to produce the fish feed. So in this study fish feed trial, we used single screw extruder, and then we achieved the steady state to each run of at a constant torque, and then we measured the extruded analysis as I showed you before. So overall, when you use the Bluelan as a binder from 3 to 6%, it increased durability of the product extrudates. So we were able to have a highly durable extrudates. And Bluelan as a binder indicated increase the water solubility index value of the sheets also. So these are all the very good results we were able to obtain, and we were able to use this research work in our for our industry partners so that they can develop the very good fish feed. So much for this thermal processing. Now I want to direct my attention into non-thermal processing. As I said before, thermal processing uses high temperature. Non-thermal processing uses a less temperature. That's why it's called non-thermal processing. But still there's a temperature involved, but not the high level of 100 degrees Celsius or something like that. Typically 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. That's what they use it in non-thermal processing. Some other non-thermal processing are high pressure processing, pulse electric field, ultrasound, ozone, irradiation, and recently there's a lot of interest in cold plasma processing and also hydrodynamic cavitation. So I'm going to show you a couple of the research projects we did, and we continue to do that. So that gives you some idea about the work. In fact, next few slides I'm going to show you is from the Dr. Logani's PhD work. He developed a new novel process development to enhance nutritional, textural, and functional properties of corn flour, sorghum flour, and apple pomace-based exudates. In this work, he studied the continuous ultrasonication to improve the total phenolic content and antioxidant activity of sorghum flour and its comparison with the patch ultrasonication, application of pulse electric field, and then application of hydrodynamic cavitation. And finally, he developed the novel process of CO2 assisted extrusion, where we use less temperature, but you'll get a better product, more expanded product, and also the reduction in the phenolic content and antioxidant will due to thermal processing will be less with the CO2 assisted extrusion. Here, what you see here is a different task, different studies we did. First one is using basically we started the sorghum flour, we fermented it, and then we either did the batch ultrasonication or continuous ultrasonication in the task one. That's what you see on the task under the task one graphical abstract. The batch ultrasonication antioxidant activity is little bit less, 178.8 micromole, compared to continuous ultrasonication. It is 188 micromole of TEO or 100 gram of dry matter. And then that is task one. Task two, we added both the apple pomace and sorghum flour. Individually, we looked at the fermentation process, and then we looked at the effect of pulse electric field. Antioxidant activity increased compared to control sample. and for both the apple pomace and circumflower. And then the task 3, we looked at the hydrodynamic cavitator. So you can see that how much more increased. So in general, hydrodynamic cavitation provided more antioxidant activity and total phenolic content. And that shows that compared to ultrasonication and pulse electric field, hydrodynamic cavitation provided better health benefits to the product we can make out of this. So we selected hydrodynamic cavitation as a process, and then we used the apple pomace circumflower, fermented, and then hydrodynamic cavitation. So once we get this product out, so we mix in different proportions, apple pomace, circumflower, and corn flour, and we fed through the extruder, which uses the CO2 before it comes in before in the cooking. So we applied CO2 to get the product out, and you can see that the antioxidant activity of the product control exudates increased compared to control exudates. The antioxidant activity increased after the extrusion process. So it's a well-developed novel product process for a graduate student's work, for PhD work. So the final, the information you see here is the comparing the control exudates with the CO2 exudates, and control exudates have the lower total phenolic content, and CO2 exudates got a higher total phenolic content. Product-wise, hardness is reduced, CO2 exudates, meaning that it had a better textural product we were able to form. And also we also improved the functional properties of the product. The next non-thermal processing I like to emphasize here is the application of cold plasma for preservation of food and biomaterial. What is plasma? Plasma is nothing but the fourth matter. We know solid, liquid, and gas. Plasma is the fourth matter. And when you look at the going from solid to the liquid to the gas to the plasma, we are adding more energy. So it's basically an ionized gas consisting of free electrons, ions, reactive atoms, neutral molecules, and photons. You can reach the plasma state by supplying sufficient energy, heat or electric gas power to gas or mixture of gases. And that's what we are doing in our work. We are using different gases and then adding energy, high voltage energy into the gases, and we are producing the free electrons, and that will have a better effect on the killing the microorganisms and having a better food safety. In terms of food safety, better product. You can operate plasma both low and atmospheric pressure and also low temperature and high temperatures. There are a lot of different applications you can have with the plasma, cold plasma. Food packaging where surface decontamination, barrier coating depositions is possible. In egg, surface decontaminations you can do. You can modify the starch, and you can do impact sterilization. You can put stuff in the packaging and then do the cold plasma treatment. That will enhance. That will be a better way of decontamination in the microorganisms, because it will not have a recontamination, because you don't have to repack the food and then there could be some contaminations. Some of the advantages: valuable tool for food industry, advanced packaging and labeling. You can it will give a better sterilization and preservation and detection of foodborne bacteria and pathogens. There's a lot of future prospects in this area. Characterization of plasma. You can develop optimum operating conditions for a given application, and it will improve the safety of the untreated safety of the treated products down the road. This is the plasma leap system we have in the lab. You see it here. There's a lot of light you see there, and that's what the plasma is all about. When you use high voltage electricity between two electrodes, you produce the plasma, and that's how the plasma leaf system works. What you see here is the colony reduction after the cold plasma treatment. Without a treatment, you can, on the top petri dishes, you can see that there's more cells there. With the treatment, the cells reduction, the cell colony is reduced to a significant level. So we did some studies so far with E. coli and LB media with the different processing conditions. So we were able to, at a 2500 hertz frequency, we were able to have a 3.63 log reduction. At higher frequency, discharge frequency of high voltage, 2700 hertz. Some cases there were no colonies, and we were able to achieve a 5.66 log reduction, which is a good result, very good results. And then we tried the similar things with the actual beef samples. We are doing other products also, but this is for the beef samples. When we increase the discharge frequency from 2000 to 2500, the log reduction increased, but not to the level of LB media, because with the beef samples, the reduction in E. coli is less compared to the LB media, but it's still significant. So at the maximum, after 5 minutes of treatment, we were able to achieve about 1.37 log reduction. And this is the graphical representation of what I showed you before. So you can see that higher exposure time provided a higher log reduction and a higher discharge frequency from 2000 to 2500 provided a higher log reduction. And these are all very significant results. So I'm going to stop here and get some questions from you. And before I move on to talk about what is STSU is all about, our university, department, faculty profiles, and admission requirements, and things like that. Dr. Logani, would you like to take some questions for the research work now, and then move on to the admission details?
I think you can just wrap up, and thereafter at the end we can take the question sessions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about STSU. You might be wondering where the STSU is. This is a university, US map. South Dakota is situated in the north central. North is, when I say north, closer to Canada. So that's what the South Dakota is all about. It's in the north central. We are also in the Midwest, where we are North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Kansas. We all grow a lot of corn, soybean, and wheat. So that is what the Midwest is all about. So you will have some picture, you will have some idea about where is South Dakota is. So university is placed in the eastern part of the South Dakota. If you want to have a more clear landmark, Mount Rushmore, the president faces. Mount Rushmore is located in the western South Dakota of the South Dakota. The state bird is called pheasant, which is Chinese ringneck. That's a state bird, and people come to South Dakota for hunting of the pheasant, deer hunting, pheasant, because in most of the Midwestern states, people carry gun, primarily for the hunting purposes, tourism, and things like that. So South Dakota, if you take South Dakota, number one income is from tourism. People from all over the world come to South Dakota for tourism, for looking at the Mount Rushmore, Black Cliffs, things like that. And also they come to South Dakota during the hunting seasons, both the deer hunting and pheasant hunting seasons. So that's how we get income. State will collect a lot of taxes, and that's how we survive our state. So where is Brookings? Brookings is where the university is located. It's a 4-hour drive from Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's about 8 hours drive from Chicago, Illinois. It's in the eastern part of the state, Brookings. Western part is Rapid City. That's where the Mount Rushmore is located. It's a very small town, university town. It's about 22,000 people live in Brookings. So it's a very, very good place to have a good graduate education because it's not a big town. You don't feel like it's in the US, part of the US, but it's part of the US only. So you'll have a lot of time to study on your things and then develop some innovative work so that your career will be much better. The Brookings community ranked number 5 of the top 10 best small towns in America. So it's a very good place to raise a family and also the focus on your work. And it's only 4 hours drive to Minneapolis, 4 hours drive to Omaha. So easy access to the bigger cities. If you look at the STSU, recently ranked in the top 10 of schools with the low cost out of state tuition. So if you look at if you take a university, if you take a semester, fall semester, we have 3 semester system: fall semester, spring semester, and summer term. Fall semester and spring semester each run for almost 4.5 months, and then summer semester is for 3 months. So if you are a out of state tuition paying graduate student, see, semester wise it'll cost you about $10,000. But if you are getting some type of assistantship, this cost will be reduced because graduate students will be tuition fees will be paid by the department. So only room meal cost will be incurred by you. So cost will be much less if you are competitive enough to get some type of assistantships. We have about 10 different colleges. We are under College of Agriculture, Food and Animal Sciences, and also College of Engineering. We also work with the College of Natural Science faculty. And then we also do some work with the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professionals. And we have other colleges, but our interaction with those college people will be much less because they are primarily arts and science, education, human sciences, nursing, and honors college. So we do a lot of research work. So our interaction with the other colleges will be much less compared to the College of Engineering, Natural Sciences, and the College of Pharmacy. We have a lot of collaboration and opportunities exist for different types of exchange programs, short-term visiting opportunities, and things like that. So, so if you want to come to STSU, you can apply for graduate programs, and there is opportunity for exchange students or faculty, visiting students or faculty, and we can do some collaborative research work, and also we can provide some internship opportunity for the students. I have listed a few companies here, but this is not all we do. But there's a lot of other companies. I think on a yearly basis we work with at least 50 to 75 companies. Our students go to internship co-op every year, 50 to 75 companies. So that's a whole lot for our university and for good opportunity for our students. So if you are interested in applying for STSU, you need to submit the admission application, and there's a $35 application fee, but we can waive that fee if you are not if you don't have sufficient funds for that. They need official transcript, official TOEFL score, some type of English score, and there is no GRE required for the graduate school admissions, graduate degree admissions in our department. If you want to know more about the admission requirement, where to apply, I have provided the link here. If you go to www.ststate.edu, and then you can do a graduate school search, and admission requirements will be there. So you can follow the link if you are interested. Before you do all these applications, I would encourage you to contact the department people who has a similar interest to you, like you. If you're interested in food processing, I'm going to show you some of the graduate faculty in our department so that you will get some you need to contact them in the beginning, try to get some funding from them before you apply. So you don't want to waste your time and money also in terms of applying to the university. So what is the department? We are agricultural and biosustainability department. We work on, we have 3 different programs for undergraduates and also for graduate. We work on engineering, we work on precision, and we work on technology. And we like to drive the future of agriculture by doing all these 3 things. Precision agriculture is a big deal. We just started a new program in precision agriculture, and we like to lead the nation by inspiring the next generation of innovators and leaders like you, and growing the science of water quality from field to family, and inspiring the future Jackrabbits. Jackrabbits is our name for our university. Our athletic team is Jackrabbits. So I'm going to show you different faculty here. Van Kelly is department head. He coordinates departmental efforts in teaching, research, and extension, and to produce graduate students. And myself, I'm working on food and bioprocess engineering, renewable energy, and biomass conversion technologies. And then we have Jimmy Gu, who became professor. He works on biorenewable advanced carbon materials, electrochemical energy storage devices, functional absorption fuel. And Linvi is recently became associate professor. We all 3 of us work together as a team. He is also working in biorefinery and biofilm, biosensors. And then next 2 people, John McMahon is assistant professor. He works on water management tools to address challenges related to water quality and quantity. And the next person is the Todd Ryan. He's a professor. He also manages water resources and livestock waste for efficient crop production and enhanced environmental quality. And then Gary Anderson is a professor. He works on the design of light gauge steel agriculture buildings across the country. He also researching the photobattery design. Finally, new professor, Dr. Yang, he developed the cost-effective environmental solutions for the livestock industry with the specialty of these things. Now I'm showing you what is the degree requirement for MS in Agriculture Biosustainability Department. There are 2 different options available for graduate degrees. Option A is the thesis credit, which is 30 credit hours. Typically takes about 2 hours, whether option A or B. Option B is the research or design paper, which takes 32 credit hours, because you don't do a lot of research in the option B compared to option A, which you have to do the thesis work. If you take option A thesis option, you have to register for at least 5 to 8 credits required in one program, in the whole program. And every semester you can register from anywhere between 1 to 7 credits. And then you have effective elective credits of 9 to 12. Option B is you have to have 2 to 3 credits for the degree completion. And so because of that, elective credits increased. So there are 2 core requirements. One is seminar credit, 1 credit, and then statistical course is 3 credits. So only 4 credits is our core requirements. Everything else can be filled with the elective courses or the thesis or research paper, design paper like that. So it's a lot more manageable, a lot more flexibility, and lot of freedom for the people to choose different courses what they want. So there is no recipe for everybody. Each person plan of study will be different based upon what they are interested, what kind of courses they want to take. So there's a lot of freedom here in terms of selecting courses you may like to take for your future career. So finally, I like to show you our new building. We are going to get a new building, which is about $50 million, and it's still in the progress, but there is we will be moving in next 4 months. So when you come to, if you come to SDSU, you will be in the new building. What you see it here. I'm going to, hopefully I can I can click on this link, and I can show you a quick video of the building progress so far we made. It's just a 1 minute quick video. hope you are able to, you'll be able to see these things. Umesh, can you see the video?
Yes, Dr. Vasu,
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So this is the conference room. Come on, keep moving. Okay, this is what you see here is high bay. High bay is where you can, if you get a very long, very tall tractors and things like that, you can bring it into the this high bay and then adjust on that. There's a classroom, so you can bring it into the classroom and then show these things in real time. And this is a quarter scale room where people develop one-fourth size of the quarter scale. So there's a lot of new facilities coming up. So it's a we are all excited to see the new building where we are going to be. So with that, I like to acknowledge the funding we received from Agriculture Administration, South Dakota State University, Brookings, South Dakota, and all of my peers in food engineering people working around the country. We all meet every year and discuss about the research project, and then we coordinate things. And we are part of the NC 1023 committee, and that's what the pictures you see on the right side. Left side is some of the students who worked in my lab, who helped me to come to achieve this level. So it's without their work and their contribution, I'm a single person. So thank you all. Look forward to having a discussion with you all if you have any questions for me.
Aditi, you can ahead with the queries.
Yes, sir. And thank you, sir, because the presentation that you designed was meant to cater the need of master's student as well as the students who are aspiring to go to South Dakota. So I expect that because we have UG students also on the platform apart from postgraduate and PhD students specifically of the engineering discipline. So if any of the students wants to put their query relevant to the presentation or how to get admission, how to go to South Dakota, how to have a footfall on the building which sir showed to us. So the questions are invited. So you can ask the question, please unmute yourself and ask the question if there are any.
I think Deepthi, we have some questions on chat box. Probably you can.
Checking. I'm checking, sir. Sir, I think Ritesh sir has asked a question. He has asked you to suggest the manufacturer of laboratory or pilot scale ultrasonic processing system and the cold plasma system.
Okay. The question is cold plasma system.
Yes,
So,
sir.
okay, what we have is a lab scale system. It's a standalone system. But I'm not sure, are there any pilot scale system available at this time? I can check on it and then I can forward some information to Dr. Logani and then he can convey that message to the right people. We got our lab scale system from Australia from my collaborator PJ Cullen, who is working in the University of Sydney, and he's the one who developed the system. So that's a lab scale system we have. But pilot scale system, I think they are still working on it, but I don't think it's commercially available yet for the pilot scale system. But lab scale system, definitely there is a system available.
Sir, I want to ask something. So when we do the processing techniques, when we apply some processing techniques like this ultrasonic technique and cold plasma technique, so is there means the anti-nutritional factor that you talked of are obviously means they are focused that we have to reduce those factors. But what about the quality of the nutritional compounds? Are those also affected when we get the output out of these processing methods?
I think with the non-thermal processing method, the idea here is we are trying to reduce the loss of the nutritional values compared to thermal processing method. If you use the regular thermal processing method, your nutritional loss will be much higher. But when you use the non-thermal processing method, the loss will be less. Okay. There is no perfect system. It's in fact, I would say that it's impossible to develop a perfect system where we don't lose any nutritional quality. We don't use any of the nutritional component. We will be losing nutritional component anytime you process anything. If you don't process, that's why people say eat fresh vegetables, fresh fruits and things like that, instead of processing it and then using it. The convenience with the processing is you get more consumer appealing products you are able to form instead of just consuming as a fresh product. Okay. Because you have convenience and also your product you are farming is more appealing to the consumers.
Sir, one more question. Can these processing methods be used at the farmers level? Because here at India, you already know that we have maximum farmers who are small and marginal. So the cost benefit ratio is always a consideration whenever we suggest any technology specifically to the farmers who are there at the grassroots. So what's your suggestion regarding the economy of these processing methods?
I think because all the processing operations involve some cost, involve some space, and the local farmers individually, they cannot afford to use their own systems. So best way to do that is government should come up with developing some centralized processing facilities. Like within 100 kilometers, you have a processing unit, which is useful for the farmers around that area. So they can bring in their stuff and then do the processing, and then they pay minimal fee for the processing cost, but they get a product out and they can sell the product instead of owning themselves. So it has to be done by the government level. In a government level, I think every state has their own way of doing processing, food processing initiative and things like that. So there is more things need to come up so that we have to help the farmers to achieve their dreams, not to expect each farmers to own their own systems, which is not possible, which is not advisable also, because there are already people are losing money in terms of farming with a lot of natural I mean, some years you get more heat, some years you get more rain, so a lot of damages. People are not making enough to meet their ends. So government should come up and provide some opportunity here so that they can develop the centralized processing industries so that farmers around that processing industry will be beneficial. Very good question. I like it.
Well, thank you, sir. Now, because I feel the questions are not there from the participant side, so moving on to Lohani, sir, for the concluding remarks, please.
Thank you, Dipti. So now we are coming to the end of the session. So first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Muthu to provide his valuable time and give us the opportunity to hear him regarding the advances in food processing. And I know this is the early time for him, but as I told you that I know him better because I think this is the best time to deliver a talk. Yeah. So
I agree because
yeah.
I'm an early
So that's
morning
why.
person. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning and then go to bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock, which is much different than people in India will try to do, you know. I know people in India sometimes they eat dinner late night, 9:30, 10 o'clock. By the time I am snoozing, you know, I'm sleeping, you know. So that's why when Umesh that, can you please give a talk 5 o'clock at that time, that's 5:30. I said, yeah, no problem. I mean, I'll be awake and I can get going. So thank you for the opportunity.
That's why I directly didn't ask the time for you. Did directly give the time to you, 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Muthu, for delivering this talk. And I think most of us take some opportunity uh, from this talk to join the SDSU as a master or PhD program after undergrad from this university. And the way you presented about the processing technologies and the scenario of the admissions and all the things there is very, very helpful for our undergraduate students as well as some PG students I can see on the screen also. So probably it might be helpful for them too. So thank you so much one more time, Dr. Muthu. I also thankful to all the participants who has given the time. It's 5 p.m. I know for most of the students this is the 5 p.m. This is the off time for them, but still they are on the screen joining us. So this is very, very appreciative. Okay, so thank you to all the participants. And at the last, I would like to thank Deepti because she is the overall, designing of all the posters, links, and everything. So without her help, I think this is not possible to conduct this kind of talk. So thank you so much, Deepti. So with this, I think I again thankful to all, and hopefully we will meet in the next talk also with the same way. Okay. Yeah, Dipti, thank you so much. You can go ahead now.
Yes, sir. So prior moving, I request all the participants to please put their videos on so that we can all together have a group photograph with Muthu sir. So please put your videos on.
Yep. All the participants, please put your video on. So that it's because now it seems that we are talking to screen, we are not talking to human being. So when you see some faces, so it looks like yeah, we are talking to some human being. Yeah, thank you. You have opened their videos. I request others too to turn
See,
on
it's
their.
for those who can afford to put their videos on because imagining sir sitting over here and having a selfie is altogether a different feeling. And he is also he has also nurtured our teachers, so we can have a group photograph with him. Few more students if they can put their videos on. Okay. So on a count of 3, 2, and 1. So smile, please. Well, so thank you for joining the session, and thank you, Muthu sir, for sharing your valuable insight. I hope and I expect that whatever you told to us, obviously few students will be covering their journey to South Dakota very soon, and they will be joining to you. They will be seeking guidance from you, and we all see is guidance from people who are from our country and who have guided our teachers. And thank you for sparing your valuable time for all of us. We hope that as soon as the situation is stable, we will have a face-to-face conversation with you here at Pantnagar. And for rest of the participants, we'll be having lectures in this series from tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and on 30th also. And for that, keep checking, keep following our social networking pages. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sparing all your valuable time. Thank you to all the participants as well.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you to be here. Thanks for the invitation. It's good to see you all for this presentation. Thanks for attending. And any questions, anything you want to ask me, feel free to do that. I think I already provided my email address to you guys. Dr. Logani has my email address also. So feel free to contact me. You don't have to come to my lab. You can go to anywhere else, but it's just a matter of I'm here as a resourceful person, so I'll be happy to reply to your email. Thank you all. You all have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye-bye.